Bhutanese democracy, are we playing our roles? When we talk about individuals playing roles, we also need to know the roles that are played by different institutions that are established with the introduction of democracy. Welcome to People's Voice. I'm Dawa, and let me introduce my guests here tonight before we move on. I have Mr. Nyimatsering and Mr. Ogendoji who will be speaking for the motion, and I have Mr. Damchadoji and Mr. Sonam Tenzin who will be speaking against the motion. As well as you must have already witnessed the Dzongkha session, we will not be dwelling into the specifics of the cases that are already there in our society, but rather we would like to look at, or rather take stock of where we have reached democratically. The institution of democracy, where have we reached thus far within this 4.5 years term? Did we fulfill our own roles? This is the question that we need to ask ourselves. If you wish to participate in this discussion or in this debate, we will flash our numbers on the bottom of your screen. So call us and contribute. For the motion, maybe let me start with Mr. Nyimatsring. What do you think when you are talking about the role that we are playing in our society, in a democratic institution? The fundamental principle, the guiding principle, or the bedrock of our democracy is our constitution. Did we abide by the constitutional provisions in trying to carry our democracy forward? Is the question that I'd like to put you, sir.
Yes, Dawa, you're right. When you talk about democracy, people usually tend to think only about election and then elected government. But the most important part is different democratic institutions that are enshrined in the constitutions, for example, like Anti-Corruption Commission, Election Commission, Role Audit Authority, Role Civil Service Commission. And also when you talk about the success of the democracy, in our case it was transition. So there are a few very important factors. First, you need to have a free election. Second, this is people's active participation either through civil society. Then you need to have majority rule, minority rights, and then constitutional government. Now, when you look back into our transitions, I must say that transition has been smooth, guided by our kings. And if you look in the constitutions, each democratic institutions is just a vote independent. And if you look under the Anti-Corruption Commission, the vote independence is there. If you look under the Royal Civil Service Commission, the vote independence is there. If you look at all the democratic institutions, and even within the like the core like judiciary, executive, and legislative separation. So overall, if you look at the individual institutions' roles and responsibility, I think in the transition period they have done an excellent job. Whether there are maybe doubts, at least in my mind, that whether they were really doing, some of them really doing, using the word independent in spirit and in action, or whether they are not allowed to become independent. That, of course, there's a lot of, I think, improvement. But other than that, if you look back, we should be proud in our transition within the 5 years. One example, as you mentioned in the Dzongkha, the smallest opposition in the world took the government in the court and won. It shows the independent neutrality of the judiciary. It also shows the how hard the opposition is working hard, irrespective of the size. So when you look at overall, I think the transition has been smooth. The challenge is 2008. You must look at more from the transition point of view. The real democracy challenge. Now people are more educated. 2013 will be the real test whether we are going in the right direction or wrong direction. Because no looking back, the kings have already devolved the power. And if the democracy goes down in Bhutan, the country goes down, we all go down together. Like I always said, if the government goes down, you can always elect every 5 years new government. But if the democracy goes down, we all go down together. So this is my view.
Okay. Before I ask Mr. Damchadoji, let me put this to Mr. Sonam Tenzin, with the hope that you might bring a new dimension or new perspective to this whole discussion, because you were not there during the Dzongkha session. What do you think the whole process of democracy in our country, looking back, taking stock of things that have happened so far. What would be your views?
Okay, thank you, Lhasa. Democracy, basically, in Bhutan, democracy has been very young right now, and unlike other countries, democracy through struggle and revolutions, in Bhutan it has been a peaceful way, in a peaceful manner, and like in reference to other countries and looking into the other countries, in Bhutan, democracy has been a very in a peaceful manner for the last 4.5 years. But going back to the democracy, how democracy is going through, we have to look into this. As he said right now, my friend said right now that democracy has to, the government come and go, but democracy should not get down. But how to make democracy better? That has to look into. Because at this point of juncture, democracy, people are not much aware of democracy in reference to the Bhutanese context. Why? Because it is very young, and to get and to reach to the people itself is very difficult. To understand what democracy is very difficult for the people, for the common people.
So you think that we are not playing our roles?
Basically, we are playing, but not better. Because to reach to the grassroots level, if you go to some remote place and ask what is democracy, no one will answer this. So these things are happening. So we all collectively need to get together for a better democracy. This is from my perception what democracy is. I feel that we all need, because as a present condition from forming a political party is a struggle right now, because we are there to have a better tomorrow for the country, for the nation, sacrificing for the nation, but to have a clean, people always think that politics is a dirty. But to make it clean, we need a good people to come in. But there are so many electoral laws, so many civil service laws. We need to look into and revisit this.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ogendoji, what do you think? The roles that are played by different institutions, sometimes, as we already discussed in our Dzongkha session, that sometimes those roles could be conflicting in nature. There are so many acts and laws passed by the parliament, and those laws and acts are often conflicting in nature. That's why we have this different views and opinions shared in different forums. What do you think?
Yes, thank you. To a large extent, my colleague, Mr. Nima, has covered, he has rightly mentioned that democracy, the different institutions enshrined in the Constitution are functioning properly. And I would supplement his argument that indeed our democracy is going in the right direction, in the right way. To begin with, we cannot do any better, because if you look today, 4.5 years, we are just 4.5 years old, and if we look around in our region, there are democracies which have been there for the last 50 years, 60, 70, even 100 years, and even they are struggling. And we are here only 4.5 years old, and we are doing much, much better. So I would say that our democracy is going in the right direction. When it comes to the institutions performing their duties and responsibilities, they cannot do any better. They are doing their best. For example, we have examined the three branches of the government, the executive, legislature, and the judiciary. They are doing fantastic. Executive is doing very well. Their job is to implement the law made by the parliament, by the legislature, and they are doing just that. And the parliament, on the other hand, is doing their best. They are representative of the people who have been elected to legislate. The role of the parliament is to legislate, represent, and oversight. All these three responsibilities are being borne by and shouldered by the parliamentarians. And the judiciary, on the other hand, is one of the most important and independent, as mentioned by Nimatsring. All these three branches of the government are independent of each other, and no encroachment of each other's power is permissible. That is mentioned in the Constitution. And we have this fourth branch of the government, that is the media. And media has the full authority, full autonomy, and independence to report and to write whatever they see it and they feel it. And that is evidence today in the various stories that comes up criticizing the government, criticizing the various agencies. And then when we look at now, lastly, the constitutional bodies like the Anti-Corruption Commission, it is investigating, it undertakes investigation on anybody without prejudice, without fear and favor. And likewise, the Royal Audit Authority audits the financial performances, expenses of the government and the various agencies. Election Commission conducts free and fair election, and they have done so far, and I'm very hopeful that they will do it in the days to come in the future. And likewise, The Royal Civil Service Commission is administering and managing the civil service in one of the most efficient ways. So I would say that by putting the functioning of all these institutions into perspective, democracy in Bhutan could not function any better.
Yes, thank you so much. Listening to what Mr. Ugindoji just said, it sounds as if there are no bottlenecks or shortcomings that we have experienced thus far after 2008. But maybe, Mr. Damsdoji, perhaps you might look at it as an opposition's point of view or give an opposition's perspective to this whole process. Young democracy, small democracy, with the smallest of opposition. Was it a struggle for the opposition to function as enshrined or as mandated by the Constitution?
Well, before I go into the specifics of your question, I would like to give a general opinion on what is happening with democracy today. Democracy has four key elements, which are a fair and just election and citizen participation, protection and promotion of human rights, and of course the rule of law, by which every person stands equal before the law. We have come a long way, no doubt about that, and we have achieved a lot of things. But is it too early? Will it be too early to say that we achieved what we wanted? Will it be too early to say we have trodden on the path that we desired? I think these are the questions that we will have to ask ourselves, and which will take a long time to answer. Democracy.
Sir, but for now, if I ask this same questions that you ask, if I ask these questions to you, what would be your answer?
Well, actually, democracy is not just about elections. Actually, it is what happens between these two elections. Now, we had an election in 2008, and we'll have another election in 2013. Now, democracy is mainly about what happens between these two elections in those 5 years. Now, we have to ask a lot of questions, was there active citizen participation? Did the government of the day encourage active citizen participation? Were the decisions taken by the government in consultation and with the consensus of the relevant stakeholders of the people at large? And was the government of the day able to take constructive criticism? What sort of precedents are we setting? And at the end of the day, are the people in general getting more disenchanted, or they are sort of become complacent and accepting whatever the government does? So, taking these into consideration, I would, in a nutshell, say that it is too early to blow a trumpet over any achievements, because as somebody has pointed out, we have just been 5 years. Now, sometimes 5 years is a very long period, but in the history of a country, 5 years is a very short period, and it is too early to predict, even to predict in which direction we are going.
Sir, but I'm sure you must be having answers to all the questions that you asked. What do you think? What about the participation of citizens at large? Did government really encourage that? Some of the questions that you asked.
Yes, definitely I can give my own opinion, and my own opinion is there is a disconnect between the government and the people. And that is why people are not feeling that they are being part of this whole process of democratization. And these fears are, supplemented more by, the conscious efforts of the government to usurp the powers of other institutions like the judiciary, the ACC, even the ECB. And whenever something wrong goes on in the government, in its policy or in its implementation, the government doesn't want to take accountability, doesn't want to take moral responsibility. Now, is this good for democracy? Is this a democratic practice? These are things we have to ask. And then corruption, it is becoming more of a menace now, corruption in a small country like Bhutan. And more so because people have a feeling that now corruption is becoming institutionalized. Then the freedom of the press, there has been a constant war between the government and the press. So what does it talk of democracy? I mean, democracy is all about freedom of press, freedom of expression, liberty. Okay. So are we, putting in the best practices of democracy? Then end of the day, we have to also ask, as a citizen of a country, as an individual, as a citizen, do I fear the consequences of any criticism that I make against the government? As a member of opposition, do I fear that? As a member of the public, do you fear that? As a member of the press, do you fear that? These are questions we have to keep on asking. And if the questions to all these are no, then we have achieved something. Yes. If it is yes, then we still have a long way to go.
Yes, thank you so much. I think there are lots of questions asked by Mr. Damchadoji, and to which he in fact answered most of them. But one question, that is, we have institutionalized corruption, that I'll put to Mr. Nyamatsering, and the other question is freedom of press. That is also another big issue here. So I'll put that to Mr. Ugendoji. But before this two answers, let me get a caller online. Hello. Okay, we got the call disconnected. So maybe first question, Mr. Nyamatsering, what do you think? Did we institutionalize corruption?
I think if you look at Bhutan, democracy is very young. So when you talk about democracy, none of us has any experience, whether you are a minister or whether you are a young person. So in a small society, it's always difficult to build the institutions. It always goes personality based. This is not just unique in Bhutan. This is true because I was talking to some of my colleagues around the world, and usually in a small country or small society, it's always because you know everybody, small community. So it's always, even if you try to build the institutions, it always goes personality based. Now, if you look back, yes, there are some problems. When you look at 2008, it was a young democracy, and then we shifted to the young and dynamic king. And Bhutanese population is fairly young, 60% of the population are young. And what we sort of made a mistake was, somehow we chose more of senior citizens to participate in democracy. Now, I say this because someone who has spent 33 years or taking the order from the king and passing the order down, overnight you can't make them change and be run like a democratic, govern in the democratic society. So it's a painful thinking. This is when I guess some of the things that happen in the defense system comes with them. Corruption is corruption, if you're asking me. There's no.
But is it getting institutionalized?
I think I'm coming back to institutionalized because things are always going personal based. So now the person who is taking the lead there is not able to sort of be brave enough and drag the institution together with the person. The institution is being dragged with the person, and this is where the problem. And this is where I asked the youth of Bhutan that in 2013, because it's your life ahead. We have a young king who is 32 years and he has 33 years of reign, and it's our life. When you talk about democracy, our generation and generation after us, we have to rise up and take the challenge. How to shift that from the personality base that drags the institution with the person and separate and build the institution where person doesn't matter, the institution matters. And this is when I think we'll have a hope to separate even the corruption from the person looking into the future.
Okay. Mr. Ugendoji, another question. Freedom of press. Government often confronting the press.
Well, the press would know if there is a confrontation between the press and the government. So I'm not working in the press, and I don't know.
But what do you think? What would be your observation? The kind of coverage that not just the government, but any other institution
having faced
receive?
the media, having interacted with the media for the last 4.5 years, my perspective is very clear. And that is, media has the total freedom. And that is evidence in the fact that we have today 12 print medias And to begin with, in 2008, there were just 3 maybe. But today we have 12 print medias now. And if the government was encroaching on media's autonomy, if the government was trying to subdue the media, if the government was trying to dictate upon the media, I think this wouldn't happen. As simple as that. So therefore, there is no denying the fact that there is no conflict between the media and the government. Media sometimes write some fabricated stories, like fictional stories. That's happening. But government has never intervened. Though there is a legal right for the government to take that particular...
Why do you think the government didn't intervene?
Well, this is basically to encourage the media.
The fact is that
because
everybody
the democracy is new, the media is new. So therefore, our party has been very clear. The DPT has been very clear. The government has been very clear that on number of occasions, medias did cross their line. Few print medias, they did cross the line, and they wrote some fictional stories, which were totally baseless, which was defamatory in nature. But government didn't take any retaliatory action.
Sir, let me put this again to you. I have asked this question to some of the ministers as well. Let me put this to you again. Now, if you in the government feel that there are some media houses who are fabricating stories, who are coming up with stories that are sensationalized, then this is bad for any country. This is not democracy. This is bad for any country. If this is the case, then aren't you taking the responsibility of letting the growth of bad media in our country? If that is the case, if you let bad media grow in our country, then you're not doing any favor to the democratic institution that we have in place there.
Exactly, that's right. I agree with you. But then now the audience, the consumer of the media, they would. I have always been the advocate or the supporter of media, the free media, of course. But then this has been one of the debates that has been going on with between the government and the MPs, between the ministers and the MPs. Some MPs were very strong in saying that this media, some media houses needs to be taken to the court for deliberately defaming the action of the government. They have personalized sometimes. So, but we have taken a very broad-minded approach towards the media, and our general consensus is that since the media is growing, just like the democracy itself, and if we take a legal action, then again, some section of the society will not approve that. They will say that the government is, getting very hard on media. They would say that government is simply intimidating the media, you see, coercing the media. So therefore, we have to weigh pros and cons.
Yes. Thank you. We have our first caller online. Hello.
Hello.
Okay, could you please introduce yourself?
I have a quick question for the motion group.
Yes, sir. But before that, let us have your introduction, please.
I'm Song from Thimphu.
Yes, sir.
My question for the motion team is our democracy a parliamentarian democracy or an authoritarian democracy? If you say it's a parliamentarian democracy, how do you explain the tobacco ban, the tax increase which the government lost in the court, and pedestrian day which the government again had to change their decision, and government not being transparent or responding to the opposition's request for any reports, namely audits reports for few cases, and also the visits to the New York by the government and apparently some family members, and also the decision of the government to ban imports just like that without any consultation and deliberation with the people. Instead of just increasing the taxes, they just banned everything.
Okay, your questions are loud and clear. I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your question. Maybe Mr. Nyamachring, would you like to respond to what he just said? Ban.
Okay. I will agree with everything he said it, and if you're asking me personally, I also am against all those. What we are today defending is, if you ask me, I'm not defending the government. We are defending the democracy in Bhutan. And democracy is not government is one component, and we cannot afford democracy to go down in Bhutan. So that's why, as a citizen, you are playing your role. The fact that you are voicing all this concern, I think it's a good thing. Government may make a good policy, bad policy. If you ask me, I will not defend any of those good or bad policy. When you talk about democracy, we are saying we must nurture democratic institutions like media, like citizens' participation. And one thing in Bhutan I think we need to encourage more is civil society, where citizens like yourself can express your view when you don't have any other channel. So like Anti-Corruption Commission is doing a good job. Likewise, Election Commission is good job. These are all part of the democracy. And in fact, like in Bhutan, we must treasure it so much, because democracy, we did not, the kings have worked so hard to give us democracy as a gift from the throne. So because of that, we need to protect democracy. Government lies in the hand of the people of Bhutan. If the government was good, you'll re-elect them. If they do not fulfill your aspirations in 2013, you can vote them out. Choices are there. So I think this is a good thing for democracy. When you can say anything protected by the constitution, you express here on the national TV, and I can say that I agree with you. And this is, I think, a good thing moving forward.
Thank you, sir. Perhaps that could be a very diplomatic answer, but I'll put the same question to Mr. Ugendoji. Before that, let me put another question to Mr. Damchidojil. So what do you think, the whole process, now for every development or for any decision that is taken by the government of the day, should all this decision be consulted or consultative? Should people be referred for any decisions that they make? If some decisions are made in the best interest of the nation, or with the public interest being kept in mind, will it be possible to refer all the decisions to the public?
When I talked of consultation consensus, I didn't mean to say that every decision that is taken by the government should be consulted with the people. No, that is why we have elected representatives in the parliament. So, but I mean, just ask a very simple question: when the government took the decision to bid for the UN Security Council, did it ever consult the opposition? You forget about the common person. I'm asking, did it even consult the National Council? I mean, these are things I'm talking about, not an ordinary citizen getting involved in all decisions of the government. So, but on the other hand, consultation and consensus also means that the government of the day should be fully aware of what the people's aspirations are, of what the people would think of their decision, and what implications would it have on the people, and if it has any implications on the people, whether the government of the day should take into consideration those concerns of the people. These are things that I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ugen. Now, a very broad question asked by caller. Too many bans sounds authoritarian rather than representative democracy.
Well, the form of government is that of a parliamentarian. There's no doubt about that. That's enshrined in the Constitution. And like Honorable Damchi mentioned just a moment before, we cannot counsel everybody. That's why we have a representative. People have a representative. All form of government is a representative form of government, or the majoritarian. There are a lot of synonyms. So therefore, it would be very absurd to imagine that, for every policy decision, the government needs to consult the people. Then we have no need for a representative. So as simple as that. And when we talk about the bans, those are the policy decisions taken by the executive branch of the government. And like you mentioned earlier, they did it in the best interest of the people, best interest of the country. But obviously some people are not happy. And when some people are not happy, and then they question the moral and the motive of the government by assuming that they are, the general public, then that's wrong. I wouldn't really agree with that as well, because now when we consult the public, I went around. For example, when we one of the sticking issue was the Tobacco Control Act before, and everybody thought that we have not consulted. And I have often in the media, in forum like this, I have mentioned that if we were to go for a referendum, I am 100% sure that the Tobacco Control Act would pass through very easily by a very wide margin, by 80 to 90%. It was a very small group of tobacco consuming people who were making a lot of noise. But then we, the parliamentarians, we took a note of that, and we did amend the bill. So that shows that though it is a rule of the majority, then we also hear the right of the minority. That's what's happening. Look at the pedestrian day. The pedestrian day as well. Though the government has taken the decision some 6 months back and implemented, since there were people who were not comfortable with the decision, the government reviewed their policy decision, and then they have come up with a new new mechanism to resolve this particular inconvenience. So all this goes on to show that the government of the day is listening to the public. If it was not listening, as mentioned by our caller, then all this amendment, all this review won't be happening.
Yes, thank you. We'll take another call, and then that call, I'm definitely going to direct that question to Mr. Somthensin, so be prepared. Hello.
Hello.
Your questions or comments, please.
I want to make a comment to our MP.
Yes.
Our MP has been always saying that, with the Tobacco Act and all this, it's just few people on the social network that's creating problems. And I believe that Tobacco Act, if we go around the whole country, most people will support that act. But then I would also like to remind our MP that in democracy, one of the most important measures of democracy is the protection of minority. So, he can't just insult this minority, a small group of people, by saying this small group of people are creating problem and we don't have to listen to them. We don't have to even, look at their concern. And that's, I think, a wrong attitude on his part.
Okay.
Minority protection of the minority interest is very important in democracy. You should know that, because he's an MP and he should know what democracy really means.
Is that it, sir? Okay, thank you so much. Now, I think this is a question that is actually directed to Mr. Uginduji, and I think you already answered it, so there's no need to dwell more into this question. Mr. Sonamthensin, as a young individual, looking back at whatever transpired so far, what do you think, role played by different institutions that we have talked in length, now we have discussed in length, what about the role that we individuals play as a public, the kind of role that we play? Do we really own this democracy? Because at times we tend to believe that, okay, this is not my responsibility, somebody is there to do it, somebody is there to fix it, somebody is there to voice on my behalf, so why should I raise it? The kind of concern that we individuals show.
Yes, thank you. So basically democracy, as I mentioned earlier, it has been for the last 4.5 years only. So different agencies, different institutions has a different role in democracy. As you have mentioned that as an individual, from my point of view, as a democracy, people are not much aware about democracy. We need to, firstly, it comes from the grassroots, where democracy comes from. Because from the individual level, it comes from the grassroots. As Honorable MP mentioned that they are the representatives, but democracy is a people's government through their representatives. But do representatives reach to the constituency frequently?
What do you think? Are they reaching their constituencies and their electorates?
Yes, as an individual, what I cannot say directly that they have not reached somewhere or other. But at overall, if I am concerned from my constituency as a remote part of Eastern Bhutan, there had been no development much taking place. That's because they always blame that this member of parliament has not coming frequently, this is not going because people at the grassroots level, they only believe that they have their representative going up.
You're saying that people have realized, people in your constituencies have realized that your representatives are not actually visiting the constituency.
Yes, not exactly, but people are always concerned that their places are not getting developed because they are only at this democratic process. They feel that they have their representative going there, getting concerned about their place for the development and all those. But they always talk that because at the grassroots level, people only understand is that they have their representative going there. He will bring the development because there is no civic education. There's no awareness of democracy happening around to the grassroots level. What I feel is democracy should reach to the grassroots level at first point.
Okay. Maybe Mr. Damchaduchu, what do you think, to make democracy reach the grassroots level? People do know that we are in a different institution, that is democracy, and in this different institution, different people have to play different roles. But the most important role that we often tend to ignore is the role played by individuals. What do you think the kind of role played by individuals? We often tend to forget the role that we as individuals we should be playing. Yes, we know our rights, but do we know our duties as individuals, not as institutions?
Yeah, as I have said, one of the key elements of democracy is citizen participation. Now, when you say citizen participation, it means both citizens' rights to participate in a democratic form of government, and also people's duties and obligations in that form of government. Now, when it comes to the duties and obligations of a citizen, definitely the citizen has the obligation to learn and to know what is happening in their country in the first place, and also to know what their elected leaders are doing. And they also have a duty and obligation to participate actively in elections, whether it is at the national or the local level. They must also play a role in forming citizen communities like civil societies. So citizens or individuals do have their role. However, these roles to be played effectively by any individual must have the genuine support of the government of the day. Now, if the government is not supportive of the citizens' participation, then there can be so many ways of avoiding citizen participation in democratic governance. So, I mean, it all depends upon how the government, views the private citizens' involvement in democracy. If the government of the day is fearful of people's participation, fearful of being criticized by the people, fearful of being transparent in its dealings, then obviously it will not lend a helping hand to the common people. So if that is not done, then where do we have the common platform for the common people to participate actively in a democracy? So it is not just one-way street. It has to be a two-way street.
Yes, thank you. Maybe we'll take our last call. Hello. Could you please introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Sanyawangji, a second year student at Royal Timpu College.
Okay.
I have some comments on the ongoing show.
Okay, please go ahead.
As my previous caller have rightly mentioned, it says that the democracy should be protection of minority. But what I feel is that there isn't that protection of minority, because even when our MPs visit or the constituency, if they see that people, that village has just a small population, they just ignore and say that this is worthless visiting that. And the other thing is that they have rightly mentioned that in democracy there should be the citizen participation. But I somehow think that the policy itself somehow, in some way, contradicts to that. For example, we have monk body being excluded from that voting rights, whereas they actually form the major chunk of the citizen, but they are not given that right. In the process, they were not given the opportunity to fulfill their duty as well to choose their right religion.
Yes, sir.
So that's what I feel.
Thank you. Thank you
thank
so
you.
much for your questions. Two questions. But I think the later one, religion is ever politics, is what the constitution says, or what the electoral law says. And that is done more out of respect than malice. So we'll leave it there. But the first question, I'll put it to Mr. Nyumatsering. Before that, let's take another question as well. This would be the final question from the audience. Please, speak up.
I think the foundation of democracy is being firmly laid in our Bhutan, in our country. But I think that freedom of media is very important in democracy. But I heard that some of the newspapers, in it, the news, some news content in it are some baseless and defamatory, as said by our MP Ugin Sering. And I still remember during the graduate orientation program at Wadi Fall, our MP said that we should not really believe everything in the news, in the media. We should use our logic and common sense and analyze well, and it is upon ourselves whether we should believe it or not. And for democracy to be successful, I guess correct information is necessary to every citizen. And if the media gives wrong information to the people, then whose responsibility is it to give correct information and information to the citizen so that we can have a good democracy. So whose responsibility is it to scrutinize whether it is correct or wrong information in the
Who
media?
regulates or who monitors media is the question that is being put. But before that, Mr. Nyumatsering, democracy, the essence of democracy is all about defending or protection of minorities, is what the caller just said.
Yes, like he rightly mentioned, democracy is a majority rule, but also the minority rights. Not just the minority, in fact, like every citizen, rights must be protected, which is enshrined in the Constitution. And when it comes to individual rights, actually, I would say that when it comes to fundamental rights, it's above the rights of the government in some cases, and unless in case of emergency. So when you talk about the democracy right now, like many Bhutanese, including like people like myself, until now we thought about the power to vote, the political power. When you talk about power, I now begin to think there's three parts actually: political power, social power, and economic power. Yes, when you vote, you have a political power, but after that, you don't have economic power. If you look at the constitutions, the first section of the first article, because it's very important, first article says the sovereign power belongs to people of Bhutan. If you come down to the section 12 of the article 1, it says the rights over mineral resources, rivers, lakes, forests belong to the state and should be regulated by law. What I mean by here is like you have the voting right given to the people, and slowly we must give the right to the wealth of the country to the people. It does not belong to the government. It belongs to people of Bhutan. And when they have the right, every citizen have a share to natural resources and wealth, they will genuinely feel that they have economic power, social and political power. So this is my
Okay. Thank you. Maybe final comment, Mr. Damchadujil. Looking back, what do you think? As you already said that we should not be blowing our trumpet on the achievements that we have made so far. But was the journey that bad? If you had to look back, how would you review?
Well, 5 years has been quite a short period. In fact, in a politician's life is quite a short period, and of course we have achieved a lot of things. Especially when you talk of economic activities, but we also had a lot of challenges. We had the most unprecedented rupee crisis in the history of the country. We have one of the highest inflations in the world. We had so many political corruption scandals involving the highest executive in the country. And we have a nagging unemployment problem at our door. And of course, then a host of other crises like our huge foreign debt, which is 68% of our GDP. I mean, these are things which are not seen favorably in any country. And so therefore, while we can blow our trumpet at some of our achievements, we also have a lot of things to worry about. And as we go into the next election in 2013, the government as well as the people, have a lot to think about. And most probably we'll find out a solution to all these problems before, the whole of the country gets drowned in the problems that we have created in these 5 years.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ogen, briefly,
Well,
if you had to refute to what Mr. Tamchidoji just said.
okay, I refute most of the points he mentioned, but I think in refuting there's no point because I have clarified most of the things that he have talked about employment, whatever the progress we have made, the economic achievement, the developmental activities that we have done, and the functioning of the different institutions and the constitutional bodies. So having gone to the length in justifying all this and again, when the points recur, then there's no point. So I would say that there's nothing much to be defended. But one thing I would like to clarify is that the one is Honorable Damche mentioned about the corruption getting institutionalized. I don't agree with that. Most of the corruption activities that's happening today and that comes in the media are those that were 10 years back, 12 years back, and I don't think it's institutionalized right now. That happened a long time back, not in the present regime. So this is one thing I would like to clarify.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Tamchidoji and Mr. Sonam Denzin. For the motion, Mr. Ogendoji and Mr. Nyimatsering, thank you so much for your time and wonderful young individuals sitting in the audience. Thank you so much for your time and participation. With this, we come to the end of People's Voice. Until we bring another People's Voice next Sunday, we are not yet decided on the issue, but we will definitely keep informing you on the issues that are coming up, and we will let you know through our website. Please log on to www.bbs.bt, where we will post a topic for next week, and also we'll definitely run teasers on BBS TV1. Until then, it's time to say good night, and thank you so much for watching People's Voice Lab.